Okay, our next task is to deal with the date of birth input. And nowadays, actually, it's probably not too bad to give it, let's say, a type. And we could give this a type of date, which would give us a date picker, a native date picker from the browser. And if we take a look at what this actually gives us, in Chrome at least anyway, then we do get a date picker from Chrome. And yeah, it's possible to utilize this. The only downside of this approach really is that different browser manufacturers have different styles for the date picker when using the native browser date picker. You don't have control over that as a developer. So it's kind of standard practice to pick or use a JavaScript-based date picker. And Angular Bootstrap does come with such a thing. So if we take a look at the documentation, then what we do have inside here is effectively a date picker. Something that will be consistent across different browsers that we can utilize in our application. So we'll take a look at using this for our purposes, and there's a couple of things we need for this really. We need the date picker module. We've already got the browser animations module, but there's also some styling that we need for this. And does their documentation help out with this? Not really. And maybe in the overview. Okay, it does mention it here, and yeah, they're suggesting getting it from the CDN, but I'm just going to go for copying this line to give me the accurate what we need to add to our Angular JSON file. So I'll do this first. Head over to VS Code. So let's open up the angular.json file, and inside here, just at the top, I'm going to add the date picker style. So we need to get this from node modules, and then /, and then we can just paste in ngx bootstrap date picker bs-datepicker.css. And otherwise, if we go back and take a look at the documentation, then effectively we are going to create a date picker and give it some configuration. I'm not convinced the documentation is that great for this, but if we do take a look at the basic example, then inside here we can see that we just use a standard input effectively, but we give it the BS date picker directive. And then we can also give this some configuration as well. And not detailed in here, but we'll take a look at the example that we're going to create for this and utilize that. So let's go back to VS Code. And we'll create something that's reusable just in case we need a date picker somewhere else in our application. So we'll go to the terminal and we'll pick a clean tab and we'll just say nggc and say _forms /date-picker, and we'll say --skip-tests and press return. And let's go take a look at our new date picker. So I'll just close this stuff down for the time being, and we'll open up the date picker component that we've just created. And once again, we'll make this reusable, which means we need to implement the control value accessor inside here. So we'll do that. We'll implement the control value accessor, and we'll implement the required methods, even though we don't actually need to do anything with these specific methods. So I'll just remove the throw new errors from inside there, and I'll just remove also the set disabled, as we do not need that either. So let's just tidy this up and add some space there. And we'll add some class properties inside here. We need the label. And we'll make this an input property of type string, and we'll just give it an empty string initially. We'll also take a max date property, because let's say, for instance, we want our application to only be available for over 18s, then we could set a maximum date they're allowed to pick from our date picker. So we'll also take that as an input, and we'll make this a type of date. And we'll also give this some config and make it optional. And we need to use the BS date picker config, which is not available. Maybe we need to add the import for the module first. So I'm going to say BS date. Yeah, we're not getting that in at the moment. So let's go back to the documentation. And inside here, I'm just going to copy this import to get hold of the BS date picker module, and I'll just paste it into the top of the file here, and we need to add that as an import. So I'm going to say BS date picker module, and let's see if we can now use the BS date picker config, and now we can. Okay, so this will allow us to give it some configuration, and we'll do that inside a constructor. So once again, we need to use the @self from Angular core, and we'll say public and ng control of type ng control. And we'll open curly brackets, and we're going to say list.ng control dot value accessor equals this. And then we can set our BS config. So we'll say list.bsconfig equals, and we'll give it a container class, and we'll choose theme-red, which is just about the closest theme we have of this available that suits our application. There are 6 different colors, not a huge amount of choice here for customization. And then we'll specify the date input format, and we'll say dd MMMM and YYYY as the date input. So we'll have the long month and the year and the days. And we're getting an error here saying that we're missing some properties for the date picker config. And what they've done with this type is they have actually made all of these required properties, but we don't want to specify all of those different properties, all 22 of them inside here, when we only want to adjust 2. So the way that we get around that is we specify that this is going to be of type partial, and then we add the BS date picker config inside angle brackets. And using partial makes every single property inside here optional. So that removes the error from this. And we'll need to do the same trick again for TypeScript purposes, so that we don't get any errors about using a form control in our template. And we'll say get control, and we're going to return a type of form control, and we're going to return list.ngcontrol.control as form control. So let's head over to our, well, let's copy what we have in our text input component template, because we are going to have similar styling for our date picker input. And we'll also open up the date picker component template as well. So I'm just going to copy the text input component in its entirety, just copy that and paste it into the date picker. And we don't need a type for this, so I can remove that. And we'll add what we're missing here as well. Although we don't need so many validators, we really just need the one for the required. So I'll remove the other validators inside here as well. And still got that error about the form control. Let's go back to the components, and we'll just add the ngIf so that we can make use of that. I'll say ngIf, and we also need the reactive forms module as well. So we'll just import that into the date picker component, and then we should have a clean input. Then we just need to add the BS date picker stuff that we need inside here. So the class is invalid, that can stay. We still need a form control styling, and we need the form control for this as well, and the placeholder. And then we need to use the BS date picker directive, and then we can pass it bsconfig as an input and specify bsconfig. And then we can also specify the max date and say that's equal to the max date, which is an input. So we need to use the parentheses there. So then we can head over to our register form component template again. So let's open that, and we're going to our register component HTML, and let's find the date of birth, and let's just move these across a tab to tidy things up. And where we've got the date of birth, then instead of an app text input, we're going to use our app date-picker and make the closing tag the same as well. And we're going to need to import this, and we don't need the type. And I've got a complaint about the label, and complaining it's not a known property of app date picker. But I'm just going to make sure I've got the component imported because I didn't get the error nor the quick fix to do this on my behalf. So let's go to the register component.ts, and I just want to see if the date picker has been imported, and of course it has not. So let's just add that in, and I'll say date picker components that we need to add to our imports. And if we go back to the register component template, then that is no longer a problem. And if we go and take a look at the result of this, and we go back to our client component and we click register and we click date of birth, now that we can see we have a date picker where we can select a date and it populates it inside there. And we can pick a different date, and we just want to make sure that any user that's selecting a date is over 18. So let's head back to our component, and inside the register component we'll create effectively the max date to restrict the date they can select. And inside the register component, let's just create a class property called max date, and we'll set this equal to be a new date. And then inside our ng on init, we'll initialize this date. So any year within the last 18 years cannot be selected. So we'll say list.maxDate, and we'll say set full year, and we'll say list.maxDate and get full year, and then add parentheses and then say -18, which should give us the correct result. So we'll go back to our register component template, and then inside here we'll specify the max date equal to the max date. And what we should find, if we go back to our template, we click on register, and inside our date of birth it now starts at the year 2006, and we're not going to be allowed to select anything newer. So that ensures at least the date of birth they select is over 18 years old. But of course it doesn't stop them from lying about their age. But anyway, now we have a reusable date input that we can use anywhere in our app. And next we'll go back to our API, we'll swing back there and configure that so that we can take these properties when a user does register.